what foods will add minutes to your life and what foods will cost you minutes of your life is the question I will be answering on today's episode of Ask Nutritionist Deepa. And to answer that question, I have no other than Professor Olivier Jolliet, who is a senior author of the paper that was recently published and professor of environmental health sciences at University of Michigan's School of Public Health. So, Professor Olivier, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to join you for this talk.
So, as you can see, as a dietitian, I was super excited to see the findings or the title of the news flash that was flashed in front of me, which was a hot dog could cost you 36 minutes of healthy life. So bravo on publishing such a wonderful paper, and tell me what triggered you to look into this subject matter.
Like I've been working on food sustainability and life cycle assessment of food system since the early 90s. In fact, we pioneered with colleagues in Europe a bit the field of doing the environmental assessment of food over their whole life cycle, from fertilizer production, application to the field, and the waste treatment of the food. And so we did it more from an environmental point of view first. I mean, more the climate change, carbon footprint, and different impact. Eutrophication, we've been publishing quite a bit on that. Water use in the last year. But then we realized on human health impacts, there are two types of impact which are important. One is during the production, like ammonia emission, they create secondary particulates, and we had done that. And then we thought, okay, nutrition, we've been a bit stupid, I would say, in life cycle assessment, because we have not considered the use phase, which is a major impact in our method. So nutritionists were working on you were working on your field, we were working on the environment, and we thought, okay, we need to bridge that. And in fact, the project we've been working on was a dairy project first, that we started with that. And we were put together with a nutritionist, Victor Fulgoni, from Impact LCC, and who is a great colleague. And together we have ideas popping up, which was really, and we started to look at, could we, beyond the nutrient indices, like Victor is the lead author for the nutrient rich index, the NRF index, which is well known. And but these indices are giving equal weighting to each nutrient. And so we wanted to move, because of life cycle assessment, we are calculating in DALYs, in disability adjusted life years, in changing life expectancy. We wanted a health-based weighting, and that's what triggered, if you like to say, the direction we took.
So what did you find? apart from the
many things. I mean, the hot dog is just one out of 5,800 food. It's a nice one to communicate on. So I like this one hot dog, 36 minutes of life lost. But on the other hand, people, I mean, the richness of the study is much, much beyond that. It was a sort of flagship to communicate. So what we found is very large differences between different foods, and even within like animal food, and we were finding big differences. So for example, what we find is, and this is based on a large study, the global burden of disease, who had got the health-based study, the epidemiological study. Based on that, we find that the processed meats, for example, is among the most detrimental food for the health. Then comes like red meat and sugar-sweetened beverages from the burden of disease. And on the beneficial side, you have the best food are like nuts and seeds, some of course vegetables, legumes, seafood that are on the positive side of the story. And in
I see.
addition, yep.
On that same note, what were your, I mean, was there a surprise for you as a scientist that you were not expecting a food on the either?
So if you like, I was surprised like peanuts will pop out so well. For example, in the that the nuts and seed were, I mean, could make such a change, like 25 minutes of life gain per serving of 30 gram.
Okay.
This is a great, if you like, change. Now you have to realize you cannot, if you eat a lot of peanuts, or you will not improve your life. Above 30 grams, there is, in the global burden of disease, there is a limit, which is called the theoretical maximum limit, TMLR, above which you don't gain more there. So it's like 30 grams for nuts and seed. It's 250 grams, I think, for fruits, for example, above which so that's where you need a variety of positive food items, not just focusing on one. You know that better than me as a day.
Absolutely. That's what I wake up talking to people about, and that's why I go to sleep talking to people about that. We cannot use one food. Even this study, we cannot, like you just mentioned, I don't want people to sit there with a big jar of peanut butter and slap it on the bread and eat it. That's not the point here. The point here is to probably select the foods from the good list, and avoid the foods which are on the bad list, and again aim for more of a very diverse diet. Because would you say now, from sustainability point of view, and that was another thing that caught my attention, that there aren't too many studies, like you said, which combine the human health and the planet health, and and I think this is just such a perfect time where those both things are on at a very interesting intersection of our lives, because we cannot win one without taking care of the other.
Yeah. So like we arrive in fact from the environmental side. So for us it's more, if you like, our daily bread for the last 30 years to work on that. But the clearly for the environment, the food which comes out with the largest carbon footprint is beef meat. Is really high. One reason for that is, I mean, to grow up a calf and then a cattle, you need like 2 years, and during these 2 years you have methane emission, and then when you slaughter, you just have the 400 kilo of beef that is there. Whereas, for example, beef, pork, and lamb would be about twice lower carbon footprint. Like 4 kilos CO2 per kilo beef is produced. The pork and lamb is about half, and 1/4 to 1/6 would be poultry and dairy products. So even if a cow is still the same animal basically than a cattle used for beef, it produces during 3 years 40 liters of milk per day. So per kilo output, if you like, or in fact serving size output, you get a much lower footprint, and it's a much more efficient production. And then plant-based, most plant-based are again an order of magnitude better still than that. But unless you have greenhouse growth crop, heated greenhouses, which then it would be comparable to milk or things.
I see. And then were there any foods that we as general public perceives as healthy, maybe, and I don't know if you looked at food product versus the ingredient. For example, let's say cereal or anything that is processed food, anything that is in a box, even though it can be plant-based. Like there are plant-based Oreo cookies now, or there are plant-based burgers, which have this aura of being healthy. But did you guys find anything in that?
We don't have the data on that. Okay, like the limitation is we are based on 15 risk factors from this global burden of disease study.
Okay.
And these include on the detrimental side, like the processed meat, the amount of red meat, sodium, which is an important factor for cardiovascular disease and hypertension, and the sugar sweetened beverages. And we don't have data, if like, how does it work? I mean, we haven't given just hot dog to 40,000 people. Okay, but people from epidemiologists look, they ask people how much serving of processed meat do you eat, and people eating more serving size of processed meat than other were shown to have higher cancer, colon cancer, and cardiovascular disease. Okay, so that's how it works. And then, like for a hot dog, it has 60 grams of processed meat. So it's about half a minute lost per gram of processed meat, a bit less than that. So the 60 gram time this 0.5, it's about 27 minutes lost with the processed meat. And there is another 10 minutes with sodium and trans fat. Okay, so that would be 37. And you gain 1 minute with the PUFA, with the polyunsaturated fat. So you finish with, that's how you finish with 36. Uncertainty plus or minus, I think 14 minutes. So the uncertainty is still very relevant. Doesn't change much. In fact, if it's 23 minutes or
36
or 36, but we have a certain uncertainty. But that's how it proceeds. And now we repeated that with 5,000 food items, where you also have the beneficial, which are the amount of vegetables, the amount of fruits that we have. So to come back to your question, we don't have enough people adding a serving size of processed
plant-based.
Processed plant-based to know how good. Processed plant-based will be better probably than meat processed. I mean processed meat. But I would say like that, if the less it looks like vegetable, the more additive they need and more work they need to it. I think it's better to take something which is close. I mean, to have a veggie burger, like a kale burger, I eat regularly kale burger, but they are still green. They are kale. I mean, they're not transformed into something else. And I think if we can afford that, or if it tastes correctly for you, that's better than having a too much process. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
But we don't have all data.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we just go by the 10 minutes that you added because of the sodium, just imagine all the trimmings which go on top of the hot dog, and the bread is processed. So who knows? I mean, that ought to be calculated for, right?
Yeah, that's if you like the process. The sodium we can calculate, or I mean, on the positive side, we have the amount of calcium. We can put that in the game. There is no value really for just being processed. We have to be careful. I've learned with time on sustainability that, I mean, small is not always, although, I mean, self-made is not always great. If like, for example, when you think if you're cooking, I'm a Swiss guy, so we have a French cooking culture from my French speaking part of Switzerland. We like to cook. I mean, we like to make our food ourselves mostly, rather than buying pre-cooked things. On the other hand, when you cook, you're using quite a bit of gas and do that. Whereas sometimes in the industrial process, if it's not damaging, if there are not too many additives, could be very efficient.
Absolutely. I think if we could come up with a central kitchen system where healthy food can be made in one, at one point and can be distributed, that would be ideal, for different ethnicities and cuisine and so on and so forth. But Professor, would you agree that all this research, in order to make it effective, we have to, as public health workers, we have to come up with some sort of an actionable steps to convert what you found into action, to make an impact, to move the needle on this public health crisis that we are having. So what would be your take-home message? Can you tell us?
And so the first things that's the neat things when we found. I mean, first, if you look at this minute of life gain and loss, that's much easier to apprehend than a label, a food label, where you have the amount of sodium, the amount of fibers, the amount of trans fat or saturated fat, which is very multidimensional. But in the end, what counts is will be healthy or not. So the fact we can communicate in these minutes, I think is I mean. And then we see the reaction with like 100,000 likes the other day on CNN, Instagram, or something like that, which is cool. I mean, to do that. The nice things we're finding is we don't need to all change all that. I mean, it's not realistic that people will change their diet entirely from one day to the other unless you have a problem. I see people doing that. You get a cancer or you get a major problem. Okay, there. Probably people are ready to, or some people are ready to switch and say, okay, I quit a certain thing, I will eat healthier. But we can make a big difference with relatively small changes. Basically, we're showing change 10% of your calorie. I mean, yeah, quit the hot dog and the processed meat, or reduce it strongly, reduce your beef consumption, and replace it by this mix of healthy food. Could be whole grain, fish, if possible, not too energy intensive fish, but there, and the nuts and the fruit, legumes, and
legumes, plant protein. You know, I mean, there's so much variety in legumes, beans, peas.
By doing that, you can reduce your carbon footprint, your dietary carbon footprint, by 1/3. And you can also gain about between 40 and 50 minutes of life per day. So that's a great, I mean, over lifetime. And it's not just prolonging your life, it's having a healthier life. I mean, it's having a life free of disease, reduction in diabetes, in cardiovascular disease, and so on.
So you just mentioned an interesting point there, that this 36 minutes of loss or this 40 to 45 minutes of gain, it is per day?
Yes, this is per day.
Oh my God.
By doing that every day, you get that. Because you basically reduce probably half a portion of meat and half a portion of processed meat, and which is the average people are taking, and gaining that. So if you multiply that by 365 days and 70 years, that's a substantial, that's several years, in fact, which can be gained.
Wow, that's amazing. My brain is just spinning at very high speed, because just amount of hot dogs that get sold in the market, if we just start showing a clock ticking with it, that would be an interesting visual for the public to see. Professor, is this list available somewhere if we want to see how the foods are ranked?
So in fact, if you go on the supporting information, which is available on Food Nature, there is a third appendix where you can find 160 food, the 160 food mostly consumed in the US, or which are representative of the median category. That's available. We are in discussion with some people to create an app, which would be interesting, or to communicate on a larger scale on that.
Absolutely. Professor Olivier Jolliet, I cannot thank you enough for taking time from your busy research work. You probably teach as well, but this is a very profound finding, and you know, like I said, it touches the human health and planet health, and hopefully, you know, and like I said, it gives us tools for messengers like me to take it to my patients and convince them basically that this is all worth it, and the good food can be tasty and we can have long healthy life. So thank you so much again.
Yeah, we can. It is great because we can make a difference with small things, one food at a time, and that's just great.
Exactly. Remember, like 10%, if they change it, it's going to add a lot of minutes to their daily life. So again, thank you so much again, and we'll meet soon. Thanks everybody for watching. Send us your questions and comments, and I will answer them. Again, thank you, Professor, and talk to you soon.